over time, it becomes a challenge. Where is that problem coming from? If one look at the nature and the quality of our rivers, if you are looking at the river systems, the rate at which they are getting polluted versus the rate at which we are able to clean them, they are posing a bigger challenge in terms of how those waters are going to be managed in terms of the cost of cleaning those water, as well as the cost associated with maintaining what has been done through those different assessments. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Now you're welcome, Honourable Matlala.
No, thanks so much, Chairperson. I'm not going to be long in asking my questions. It's just a few questions on the DPME. I would start by saying that I think your report is very outdated, because looking at the stats, it doesn't speak to what we see now. Like when you look at your report, it put Gauteng as one of the provinces where we don't experience interruptions and all those things. And Mpumalanga. And whereas now what we are experiencing, I'm staying in Gauteng, we are suffering, we don't have water. And it used not to be like that before, but now we are seeing something else. So I think if we can start there. And the other thing, the issue of also, I think I heard also Honorable Kamaida talking about it, of assessments. An assessment without a clear report is equals to nothing. To just say that you have assessed this, there's assessment of the water infrastructure, but you don't tell us what's happening. But it's fine, because we have already got that from the other departments and the department as well. We know that the infrastructure in the country of water, the wastewater and the water infrastructure has collapsed, and how many of those of those infrastructures are affected. So, your presentation, DPME, I think you are a ministry in presidency. It paints a very rosy picture of water access improvements, claiming that household with no access to pipe water halved from 19.7% to 8.7% between 1996 and 2022. Yet millions of South Africans still lack basic water services. You go to Limpopo, you have mentioned that the Eastern Cape. Now we are adding other provinces like Mpumalanga and Gauteng. People are suffering, they don't have water. What you are telling us in books is not equal to what you see on the ground. So my question is, as the department sitting in that office, higher office in the country, how can the DPME justify celebrating these statistics when communities like Hammanskraal have been without clean drinking water for years? Isn't this selective use of data a deliberate attempt to obscure the government's failure in providing basic services to all South Africans? Because you told us the methodology used is on evidence, but evidence that we see on the ground, Tina, is very different to what you see. I think you got it from the books, if I can say so. I think we are the best in terms of doing evaluations and assessment as members of the EFF. We are the ones that goes to the ground and we tell exactly what we see to the ground. Others, I think they just read from papers. Now we go and we meet on daily basis with our communities, and we are seeing these struggles. Number two, the presentation acknowledged poor governance in water service authorities and water boards and increasing debts as persistent challenges, yet offers no concrete solutions. So given that these issues have persisted for years, what specific measures has DPME implemented to hold corrupt officials accountable and ensure proper financial management? Or is the DPME content with merely listing problems without taking decisive action? Another question, I think, which is, the DPME leads slow water infrastructure development as a challenge, but fails to address the billions of rands allocated for water projects that have disappeared due to corruption and mismanagement. So my question to that is, how does the DPME explain the massive discrepancy between funds allocated for water infrastructure and the actual results on the ground? Will the DPME commit to a full forensic audit of all water-related projects to expose the extent of corruption and recover stolen funds? So, with regards to the water use licenses, unauthorized operation with unapproved water use licenses leading to unsustainable water use and destruction of water courses. Why has the DPME allowed this blatant disregard for environmental regulations to continue unchecked? Is this not a clear indication of the government's failure to enforce its own laws and protect our precious water resources? And finally, Chairperson, the DPME suggests accelerating institutional realignment and rationalization of water boards into regional utilities as interventions. How can the people of South Africa trust that these bureaucratic reshufflings will lead to any real improvements when similar provinces have been made for years without tangible results? Is this not just another attempt to avoid addressing the root causes of corruption and incompetence within the water sector? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was about to ask Mr. Mhlala to respond, but to avoid the conflict of interest, I will just take the questions. Chair, I think in terms of the structure of the presentation, we were asked to just report on a particular period and relative to what the department did or did not do for that period. But we'll be willing, Chair, if we're to be asked to reflect on the 5-year trajectory, we should be able to do that. But we confine this report to what we're asked to do. So that's the first issue. Now, on the use of stats, what we attempted to do was to give an indication, one of the 30-year review that we undertook and published as a department, but also reflect on what is that SAE does in terms of the statistics. I think that was just to add value as a way to show the trend over a period of time of how far we have moved on. Now, in terms of the current situation, we will refer to current as at the end of March. So maybe in future, Chair, we can be given an indication that as we report on an annual cycle, we need to also deal with contemporary issues, because the report will be as at the end of March. But in future, we will be willing to deal with associated or emerging issues as an annexure to the presentation. Now, as I round up, in terms of the concrete solutions, we do indicate, Chair, and I made an indication at the start that out of this engagement, or out of your engagement with the Auditor General, we even agreed to meet with the Auditor General to share with them what is coming up in the 5-year plan of government. That all these issues that are being raised by ourselves and by the AGSA will find expression in the new plan. Lastly, in terms of corruption, we have a dedicated team in the presidency that is looking at the implementation of all the recommendations of the SIU going back many years. So what we are doing is we focus now on ensuring that the recommendations of the SIU are implemented. So we don't do investigations on our own. Investigations are done by the SIU and others, but our role now is to make sure that the recommendations of the Zondo Commission, of the SIU, are implemented. That's what we are doing currently in the presidency. Thank you.
Colleagues, can I ask whether we can stop this here now, or Honourable Member, would you like still to ask a question, or can we ask them to bring back a report to us on a later stage? Honourable Mosekatsi, would you like to still ask a question? You're fine. Stanley, yes?
Chair, I agree, but in addition to that, I just want to request that in that meeting that will come and present, we want their response to the blue drop, green drop results.
So can we maybe ask that they give that in writing to us? We don't wait for that, so that after this meeting, they've got 14 days to present us their view on that, and then we can receive it in writing. Everybody happy?
No, we're happy. And some of my questions were not responded to. If they can also just put it in writing if possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then, DG, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you for being here. And please make sure that in future, when we get presentations and what you present, it's exactly the same. I don't know where that problem came in, but what we have received and what you presented, there was a difference. Thank you very much for your time. And we will invite you back to this committee in near future. Thank you very much. I think since we've settled now, yeah, you can sit here next to me. Good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to this meeting this afternoon. We will also once again observe a moment of silence. For being here this afternoon to make your presentation. We've been, as a committee, been sitting since this morning. So for us, it's a long day, and hope we will have a fruitful meeting with the department on the issues that's on the table. May I then hand over to the Minister.
Honourable Chair, thank you very much to honourable members of this portfolio committee present and those that are not here, to the two deputy ministers, the DG, the chair of TCTA and the board. Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, for affording us this opportunity. We are quite aware that you have been in a meeting throughout the day, quite aware that some of your members Honourable Chair, last year the department made substantial progress when it comes to the reforms in the water sector. These reforms can be divided into two main categories. The first one is reforms related to the functions of the National Department with regard to its roles and responsibilities in terms of National Water Act. And secondly, it is the reforms related to the provision of water services by municipalities in terms of Water Services Act. It is always important that you must mention the role of municipalities because it is a constitutional role that they play, that of provision of water. We play a supporting role. In terms of the first category, two long outstanding objectives of the government were achieved. Honourable Chair, you were part of this committee with Honourable Mohlala, Honourable Moore. You know very well that the Sixth Parliament passed the National Water Resource Infrastructure Agency Bill. The establishment of that National Water Resource Infrastructure Agency has been part of government policy since the adoption of the National Development Plan in 2012. Therefore, it was a milestone that the Sixth Parliament passed this bill, and the President has since assented to it. It is now an act. Secondly, the department finalized the establishment of the remaining catchment management services or agencies. The establishment of the CMAs, which is the cash management agencies, is a requirement of the National Water Act dating from 1998. The establishment of this NURIA and the remaining CMAs has major implications for the department in the current financial year. Hence, I want to point at it right on the onset. This establishment of this National Water Infrastructure Agency involves the merger of three currently fragmented components of the National Water Resource Infrastructure, namely the TCTA, the water trading entity in DWS, and most of the infrastructure branch in the department. The department is now seized with the process of transferring National Water Resource Infrastructure assets and is approximately 3,000 employees that are supposed to be transferred for the maintenance and operation for these assets to the National Water Regulation Agency. This is a major change in terms of management. An undertaking will require us to focus on this transfer and bringing together of these three currently fragmented components. Similarly, the establishment of the remaining CMAs involves transfer of functions currently being carried out by the department to the CMAs, which also involves transferring of plus minus 600 staff members. However, we are discussing with all labor unions in terms of those, and it is a voluntary transfer. The department is not going to forcefully transfer employees if they feel that they don't want to join. At the moment, the recruitment process is on hold so that we finalize the matters that are in the bargaining council. Both of these reforms are aimed at improving the implementation of the National Water Responsibility in terms of the National Water Act. The establishment of this agency will enable the national government to raise more finances in the financial markets for investment in water sector resource infrastructure. This is very important because if we are to ensure that availability of raw water does not become a constraint to economic growth in future, we must ensure that we move with speed. We're all aware that government fiscal position is not making things easier for government to provide water in terms of the mega projects that we have because of the financial constraints. Hence, we appreciate that once we have this agency, the agency will move with speed because it has those fundamental rights to go and fundraise. In addition to being a legal requirement in the National Water Act, the establishment of the remaining CMAs will enable improved raw water catchment management, which involve local stakeholders. This is also critical because if we are to ensure that raw water sources are protected and that water use rights are allocated sustainably and equitably, we must involve local stakeholders because they are there on the ground, so they have interest because they are also beneficiaries. Honorable members, through you, Chair, the greatest challenge facing the water sector is the deteriorating performance of municipalities with regard to water and sanitation services, including their water infrastructure. The blue, green, and no drop reports that DWS, our department, issued in December 2023, indicated that municipalities' water and waste services have generally declined sharply over the last 10 years in terms of indicators such as quality of water provided, quality of effluent from wastewater treatment works, and the levels of physical water losses and non-revenue water. The reports also identify the key causes of the decline, including, amongst others, weak billing and revenue collection, insufficient prioritization of budget for maintenance by municipal councils, and insufficient employment of staff with a requirement on proper qualifications. This decline in the delivery of municipal water services has taken place despite a very high level of support from the national government to municipalities, including more than 60 billion, Honorable Chair, per annum in grants for water and sanitation infrastructure and for free basic water for the indigent, as well as substantial technical, financial, and other capacity building support. This indicates that support is necessary but not sufficient to turn around the decline, and structural reform of municipality water services function as is also required. The solution is not for national government to take over municipality water functions, but municipalities must be made to work better in a coordinated manner, but also to deliver on the constitutional mandate. Reforms need to be aimed at ensuring that municipality water services become professionally run and financially sustainable. It is for this reason, Honorable Chair, that we completed a public consultation process last financial year for amendments of Water Services Act. The proposed amendments seek clarity that the roles and responsibility of Water Services Authority and water services provider, and introduce a requirement for municipal water service providers to have an operating license with the aim of ensuring adequate performance and sustainability. The two-in-one is not currently working for municipalities. Further reforms are also required, including measures by National Treasury to require the ring-fencing of revenues from the sale of water services for water services and changes to grant conditions to strongly incentivize better management and financial sustainability. The department is currently awaiting approval of the state law advisor for the Water Services Amendment Bill, after which cabinet approval will be requested for the bill to be submitted to Parliament, and it will come through to this portfolio committee. Once the bill is passed and become an act, it will provide an enabling framework for municipalities to undertake Section 78 process in terms of Municipal Systems Act to consult with their residents regarding possible alternative water service providers that could be appointed. Honorable Chair and honorable members, the current collaboration between Rand Water and Mfuleni local municipality to establish a special purpose vehicle for the water service provider in Mfuleni is a good example of what we envisage will happen increasingly in future once Water Services Amendment Bill has been passed. The department is also currently awaiting the approval of the state law advisor for the revised for minimum skills and qualification for key municipal employees involved in the management of the water treatment and the water treatment works. One of the other areas of focus of this department over the last few financial years has been reform for its internal water use licensing process. This has resulted in a performance improvement of 35% of water use license applications being processed within 90 days during the year 2022-2023, 70% currently, because we have a turnaround plan of issuing those licenses within 90 days. Last financial year, the department greatly improved in the expenditure against its budget and achieved 100% expenditure of the RIPIC and WISIC grants allocated to municipality. This was an improvement against under expenditure of 2 billion and 800 million in the past two financial years. Hence, we're saying there are improvements in the department. The improved expenditure on these grants means that more municipal water treatment works and wastewater treatment works are being constructed, rehabilitated, or having their capacity increased to enable municipal water services to be provided with the community, to be provided to communities more reliably. It also means that more communities are being provided with access to water services to which they previously did not have. But that is not enough, because population in South Africa is growing day by day, and therefore water is a need and the right that is demanded by population on a daily basis. So whatever we are doing, we're chasing a moving target because the population is growing. It is very difficult for the department to ensure full expenditure against these grants because the projects are managed by municipalities, not by us as the department, which usually procure and contract with contractors for the projects. To address this challenge, which on several times has been asked through questions by members, to say, how do you then monitor the grants that you send to municipalities? It is against this background that the department strengthened its project management and monitoring capacity of its water services branch.
have been found that observed that they are not going to deliver on time because of they are very slow, we move those grants to fast moving projects. For example, during the last financial year, transfers from Mopani District Municipality for Kiane Water Project were accelerated because the project was being implemented more quickly. This in turn enabled accelerated achievement of the goal of providing clean water through household connections to residents of Guyana, which is not yet complete. This process was also enabled by the department changing to a rolling 3-year approach to managing its grant allocation to between expenditure and the achievement of targets in the annual report, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members. While full expenditure was achieved on the grants, not all targets were achieved because some of the projects were not completed as planned. However, more progress than planned was achieved on other projects to which funds were transferred. As will be illustrated during the presentation by DG and the team led by CFO, the department has made good progress actively bankrupt 6 years notwithstanding challenges posed by the non-payment to water boards by some municipalities. The department will continue to strengthen the internal controls to ensure that its audit report improve further and that there are no repeat of on audit findings with the aim of achieving a clean audit in due course. With the debts owed by municipalities, we are going to give a better report in the next 2 months or so, where we have received a lot of commitments from municipalities through the misses for Cocta, through the premiers, that of a clear repayment plan to the boards, and we are looking
treating are inevitably delayed. It's always unforeseen things which happen on projects, construction projects, which result in them being delayed. So because we took the approach of treating the projects as multi-year projects, we were able to say we don't have to spend all the money allocated to a project in one financial year. If a project is delayed for unforeseen reasons, it can be completed over 2 financial years, for example, and we can provide the money required to complete the project in the second financial year from our MTF allocation in the second financial year. And we were then able to we strengthened our monitoring capacity in our water services branch and our project management capacity. We monitored all the projects being implemented by all the municipalities more closely so that we could early on detect which projects were moving slowly. And we then, in consultation with the municipalities, moved money from the slow-moving projects to the fast-moving projects, like the Guyani water project that the Minister mentioned, for example, so that we could make more progress there, projects which could absorb more money and still spend it effectively. And then the projects that we took the money from, we'll put the money back in the next financial year. So, as indicated by the Minister, there might be an apparent anomaly between the fact that we spent 100% of our infrastructure grants and the fact that we didn't achieve 100% of our targets related to the infrastructure grants. And the Minister did explain that, but I'd like to expand on it a bit more. So some of our targets might be, for example, that we will complete 20 projects in a particular province, just for example. But if some of the projects were slow moving and weren't completed, and they're going to be completed in the second year, it means that we might not have achieved that target. But it doesn't mean that the money wasn't well spent, and the money would have been moved to other projects where more progress was achieved. And that explains why there was 100% expenditure, but not 100% achievement of targets in relation to the grants. Now you'll see when Babawa presents the performance information, we've color-coded it as red, yellow, and green in the slide, and green means that we achieved 100% of the targets, yellow is 50 to 99%, and red is below 50%. You'll also see on that table when Babawa presents it, that it shows in some of the figures, it's got numbers like, for example, that 12 of 11, a target of 11, but there were actually 12 done. That's because of this process that we're doing of putting more money on faster moving projects. So we overachieved on some areas, but underachieved on other areas. But the overall impact is that we didn't achieve 100% of the targets, even though we spent 100% of the money. But in general, in terms of achievement of targets, we have improved somewhat as the department. For example, in 2019-20, we only achieved 53% of our targets in the APP, whereas last financial year we achieved 70% of our targets in the APP. Expenditure in other areas of the department. So as a whole in last financial year, we spent 99.8% of our total budget.
We highlight, as the DG had mentioned, for the year under review, the department managed to achieve 70% of its planned target as compared to the expenditure, which was an improvement. This graph, which is slide 12, is an indication of that. And in slide 13, this is just a disaggregation of the 3 budget programs on how they performed for the period under review. In 2022, there were preferential procurement regulations that required departments to track their performance against targeted procurement from designated groups. We achieved 47% against the target of 30%, which was the required target. We are further required to do a disaggregation from designated groups, from black-owned companies with the ownership of 50% and above, women, the sub-programs, the 4 sub-programs that are there, and their performance for the period under review. The subsequent slides, Honorable Chairperson and members, are just a highlight We've highlighted the performance of those sub-programs. There are 7 of them. The graph in slide 24 highlights the performance of those sub-programs, which includes the performance of these CMAs. We are highlighting in the slide 25 and 26 key highlights, which have also been mentioned by the DG and the Minister. And then in slide 27, which relates to the planning achieving the planned target within our ecosystem. slide 34 and 35, we have highlighted the department that the minister and also the DG highlighted in terms of the infrastructure build, what activities we are planning to do in that space. So that is it. Underwater resources management, water services management. It has got 6
as the accounting authority, we need to make sure that the organization continues to achieve its objectives while it's actually making sure that the agency is successful. So I will then hand over to the CEO to make sure to do a presentation on a summary of what TCTA is all about, and then the CFO, Ms. Busisiwe Shongwe, will then get into the financial aspects. Thank you very much, Chair. Over to you, CEO.
CEO, we have gone through this report, so you can just highlight where needed. You don't need to go through each and every page. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and members, Minister and Deputy Ministers, colleagues and DG. I will try and make sure that I move first in the presentation, and I think I've been partly covered by some of the issues as have been raised. This would just be the outline of the presentation, but one would go through those quite quickly. We are aware, Chair, that this is the 7th administration, so there's a number of new members that don't know what we do and how we do it. So the first 4 or 5 slides really are talking about who we are, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Our mandate being derived from the notice of establishment, legal framework. I think the most important part is the one that talks that we are listed as a major public entity under Schedule 2, but this is about to change on the basis of the signing of the bill into law of the agency, which is what the Chair was just talking about. Our history now really is linked to the Lesotho Highlands Water Project, but there was an amendment that allowed the Minister then to give us directives. So TCTA primarily does not have a balance sheet, does not have access to money coming out of the fiscus. What it relies on its mandate and directives that it gets from the Minister, which then requires it to go into the market and raise funding. The only time that we actually have access to money that comes from the fiscus is if any project that we do has a social component, which is where the department will come in. Except for that, there's no access to money that's coming via the votes. I think it's very important when we talk about where money is coming from and how we deal with that. And this is really talking about who's the TCTA and what we do. We do project structuring, project funding, project implementation, liability management, tariff setting, advisory services, and knowledge management. And we report to the Minister of Water and Sanitation, and there is a shareholder compact, which then regulates the agreement between the Minister on the expected performance targets. And every quarter, in terms of what we do, the project, where they are, whether there are delays or not, there is a quarterly report that is sent to the Minister, and the Minister really manages us through that in terms of looking at what is in the compact versus what our performance looks like. And this really talks about the build infrastructure, the raising of funding, and the operating and maintenance of the acid mine drainage treatment works, and the delivery tunnel north of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project, which is the South African portion of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project. Now, getting closer to the issues in terms of organizational performance, the projects that we're currently implementing is the phase 1 of the Mkomazi Water Project, which is in KZN, the Berg River Fuel Flow Augmentation Scheme, which is in the Western Cape here, the Vaal River System, which, although it's coming from Free State into Gauteng primarily, it's actually serving about 2 other provinces as well. And the phase 2A of the Mokolo Crocodile River Water Augmentation Project, which is more linked to the Limpopo activities, especially linked to the water bank, but I will touch a bit on that later. The Mkomazi Water Project phase 1, this will transfer water. It's going to serve over 6 million people in the KwaZulu-Natal area, especially looking at Durban and Pietermaritzburg regions. And that's the stats of what we will be doing in terms of the tunnel that needs to be built, and that would link up with the work that is being done by Mgeni, so that we don't actually increase the cost unnecessarily. The project is in its early design phase. There is a professional service provider that is currently doing the geotechnical investigations and the field survey on both the tunnel and the dam. The estimated cost is about 27.5 billion, including the escalations, because we're trying to make sure that we know exactly how much the project actually cost. Initially, in terms of this project, and it's one of the ones that were delayed, and I think part of the presentation that was done by the AG would have highlighted this particular part. And that particular portion thereof was related to the affordability of the project, because ultimately it's the ordinary people in the street that needs to pay for the water. So TCTA worked together with the DG in the department and also National Treasury to try and see whether we can alleviate that problem that the municipalities, especially eThekwini, was complaining about. And most of the negotiations that led to the delays were coming from here, where they were saying they require the water, but they cannot afford it. So we were able to engage with the budget facility for infrastructure to get an approval of a grant of 6 billion, an additional 6 billion in the form of interest-free loan from the infrastructure fund. I must say it's the first project that we did where we actually had to engage with state through National Treasury and its entities to try and see how do we help the people on the ground that are saying the water, or getting the water there is actually very expensive. So this is what we've done. Normally we only get involved in projects where, if based on the feasibility outcome, the department looks at two things: whether there's a potential to get water there, that's the plan, they are planning environment in terms of what they do. And then the second thing is they will look at doing an analysis during the pre-feasibility stage to say, would there be people that are economically active that would be able to afford the water in terms of the total project. So over a period of about 20 years, then we will go into the market only with that information to try and actually make sure that we will do all the work, and then we'll engage with the funders. We'll have to make sure that the funders are comfortable so that they can give us the money to do the project. Like I said, we don't get any money from the state in terms of coming out of the fiscus at all, but this is the methodology that we've used. But with the deterioration of the economy, I think for a long time, we also understood that something had to be done from a point of view of ensuring that we can engage with the National Treasury, and they did come to the party in terms of us being able to get this 12 billion to try and actually ensure that the ultimate tariffs are not as bad as they could have been. And then the next one is the one in the Western Cape, as I've said, one of the smaller ones. The project cost is about 1.2 billion, and it's part of what was. And I heard one of the members talking about the experience with Western Cape in terms of what has happened with the water shortages. So this project is designed to actually deal with that particular situation so that that can be mitigated as well. The next one is the Val River system, which we're now looking at phase 2. And the importance of this is the Val River system supplies about 46% of the country's economy. It supports that, and 33% of the population. So this is a massive project that has to be done. And so far, TCTA has successfully fulfilled its mandate to make all cost-related payments to Lesotho Highlands Development Agency relating to this project. Further project cost increases may require an increase in the planned funding facilities and/or tariffs to be raised. The approved project cost is sitting at 42.5 billion, but we are waiting. We know that there is a lot of work that is being done now, which with a potential escalation, but I think we will report once that has actually been finalized. Again here, the particular project, South Africa pays for the implementation of the project, but the implementers are sitting in Lesotho. So there is a lot of coordination that we do based on the treaty, I guess, as some of our instruments that are used to actually deal with this particular project. But ultimately, what we get as an enduring benefit is the water that comes out of Lesotho into South Africa. And I think in terms of water security, that's why it was important that we look at the second phase. The earlier presentations were also talking about the problems in Gauteng, the availability of water. So in terms of ensuring that there's water security, it's very important that this project gets done and we are able to ensure that we can actually finish it. I think the projected time now is around 2032 in terms of when are we going to finish with the project. The phase 2A of the Mokolo Crocodile Water Augmentation Project, this will augment water supply to ESCOM, the IPP power generation, associated coal mining, the Lephalale municipality, and unlock economic development in the Waterberg coal fields, as I've said. This is the technical information in terms of what we need to do. The project cost is around 12.3 billion, and it took us almost 20 months, Chair. And this is why there are delays in this project. In March 2022, the National Treasury gave us the Note 3 that I think the department talked about, and even the AG talked about, where we were actually told that we could not go and advertise without having funding. Now, we are a debt vehicle by nature. What we do is we don't have money, we don't have a balance sheet, but we go into the market to raise that those funding. Only in November 2023 did we get the exemption, and that's why we could start. So some of the delays in this project are also based on some of the instruction notes that come, because sometimes they don't actually fit with everybody. I think the different institutions that Parliament oversees, there's so many different dynamics in the kind of businesses that they run, that it's very important to, and I'm raising this because there's other new members that don't know of, in fact, in terms of how some of these things operate. But from our side, that really left us with a gap of almost 20 months where we could only start afterwards. But then we decided this is not going to help. Let's rather now try and get that exemption, which fortunately it was granted. So that's why there are delays, and these things all actually end up now delaying service delivery as well in terms of how we need to do things. But we are now at a point where these projects are underway in terms of what needs to be done. Projects that Minister has actually given to us for operating and maintenance, as I've said, is the acid mine drainage treatment plants and also the delivery tunnel north of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project. On the acid mine drainage water treatment plants, there are no issues because we are able to meet all the requirements as set up by Department of Water and Sanitation. On the delivery tunnel north, I think the Minister in her opening statement talked about the very crucial and required maintenance plan that we do every 5 years. This one is the longest, which is about 6 months. But we are on track in terms of having started from the 1st of this particular month with shutting down water coming from Lesotho into South Africa. So in terms of our program, we are on track in terms of the work that needs to be done. So we had promised the Minister that we will be delivering upfront about 780 megalitres of water, because this is what we have to do. So we are able to do 779. The last megaliter, Minister, it's when we are watering now the tunnel, and there's enough water to actually be cater for that 1 megaliter of water. So from a point of view of us being ready and making sure that some of the provinces downstream, like Gauteng, do not suffer, we are really intact. I don't think the likes of Rainwater would have a problem with being able to have enough water for people during this particular period. There were a few areas that we were worried in the Free State, but there are other plans that the department, together with the municipalities, have actually put in place. And the Minister was there herself in terms of leadership to actually ensure that everybody is ready for this particular shutdown. So that's where we are in terms of the work that we do managing the delivery tunnel. And on the performance information, we really did get a clean bill of health from AGSA from a point of view of how do we operate and maintain designated project to meet with the department's requirements and specifications. And debt management, because like I said, we go into the market to borrow money, but we need to make sure that we can repay the money. Now, for all the projects that we have, and before we do that, we need to go to Treasury. Treasury needs to give us borrowing limits, and they manage us on a quarterly basis in terms of how that money is actually utilized. So for all the projects that have been listed, the Val River System, Berg Water Project, Val River Eastern Subsystem Project, Komati Water Scheme Augmentation Process, and the Mokolo Crocodile one, we actually have ensured that on all projects, capital and interest payments were made on due dates, and the borrowing limits that is set by National Treasury were not actually breached. So this is how we work, because part of the amount of money, as I've said, Chair and members, it says that National Treasury has to look at its own balance sheet and ensure that we are actually keeping with what they actually allow us to do. So sometimes before they make these decisions in terms of the borrowing limit, it takes a long time, and those are some of the gaps that we have in terms of how soon can we start with the projects, because we know we want to get to service delivery as soon as possible. But there are all these processes that are necessary and have to be done. I think at this point, I will hand over to the CFO then to deal with the financial summary.
Thanks, CE. Thanks to the chair, members, Minister and DM. Chair, I think in terms of the finances, we'll just go through the material items on the financial statements. I think we'll start with the financial position, looking at the tariff receivable. In terms of this mainly increased from 8.8 to 9.9 billion. Is due to the revenue received being below the actual. Thanks, Chair. And in terms of the cash and cash equivalent, this has reduced from 9.3 to the 6.3 billion. This is mainly due to the increased cost and the repayments that were done during the year under review. And for the retained earnings, this one has increased, and it's just the balance in terms of the income statement. And we have the financial market. This one's share, they have reduced from 13.3 billion. They have gone down to 11.8. This is mainly due to the capital payments that were done in the year under review. For the financial operation highlights, I think the first one is just looking at the tariffs billed. In terms of this, we were below budget. This is mainly due to the lower volumes than what we used in the budget. And the operating expenditure, this is below budget. This is mainly due to the lower staff costs and on the impairment reversals and the net impact on the royalties and the LHD operations and maintenance. And for finance income, we were below budget. This is mainly due to the interest being below what was originally budgeted for. And for the finance charges, this one we exceeded budget. This is mainly due to the variable interest received, paid being more than what was actually budgeted for initially. The next slide just deals with the distribution of our debt. Most of our debt is from the VRS, and we have the ones on FRESAP, which is sitting at 19%, and on 8% is NCOP, and 7% is WASAP, and this is similar to what we had in the previous financial year. The next slide is just the cash flow analysis of where the money goes. The biggest one is the cash that we pay to suppliers, that's the 70%. Interest is at 10%. This is due to the nature of our business, Chair. And the capital repayments and borrowings, we were sitting at 12%. And for the cash flow for investments that were done, we were at 7%. Chair, on the next slide, this is just a slide on the irregular expenditure. I think for the irregular expenditure, this is mainly due to the expenditure that was incurred in the previous financial years. It goes as far as 2016-17. So we had a balance of 444 million, and there were errors from the previous years, which was declarations that were incorrectly done. And for the current year, we only had a regular expenditure of 175,000 rand. This results from only 2 transactions, and the board wrote off, or they approved the removal from our finance of 285, and this was done in line with the PFMA and with the framework as issued by National Treasury. I think in terms of the movement on the irregular expenditure, there has been a reduction in that. That's mainly due to the internal controls that were put in place. That is to ensure that we do get to the zero irregular expenditure. This is still work in progress, but we are on track, making sure that that gets reduced. In terms of wasteful expenditure, Chair, our balance was 3.7, and this is transactions that come from 2013. Those transactions were dealt with at the time based on the framework that was available, but there was the administration thereof where it needed to be approved by the board, which hasn't been done yet. We will be sending it to the board for removal in the next board cycle. On the external audit opinion, we have received an unqualified audit opinion with the matters of emphasis. The matter of emphasis was mainly on the restatement of financial statements. We had to adjust the financial statements that were initially submitted to the AG. So what we will be doing, we have an action plan that we submit to the Audit and Risk Committee on a quarterly basis to ensure that at the end of the year we have addressed all the findings and we do not have any repeat findings. On the going concern, the board has assessed TCTA as a going concern, meaning that we will be in existence for the next financial year and will be able to meet all the obligations as they fall due. That is it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Minister, would you like to add before we start the discussions on these two reports? You or your deputy ministers?
No, Chairperson, afternoon, and members and ministers and the chair of the board and the DM. Our suggestion, let's allow the members to engage with the ministry on the two presentations. And as deputy ministers, under the guidance of the minister, will come during responding to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good afternoon to the Honourable Minister, Deputy Ministers, the DG, our Honourable members, and all present in the House. My questions are as follows. I will be asking questions and also make my observations and recommendations. My first observation, Chair, is on page 10 of the comparison between the non-financial performance highlights areas of the underperformance. And I have noticed that some of these areas are reoccurring when one looks at the previous financial year annual reports, such as the lack of implementation of risk management plan, the finalization of the application for water use authorization, dam and safety rehabilitation projects completed. The question is, what actions has the department taken against the officials who have failed to implement these tasks? If not, could you please explain why the department has not taken any action against the officials? And then my recommendation would be to the department. I would like to submit the portfolio to the portfolio committee that in instances of poor performance by the departmental officials, I wish to recommend that training and capacitation of the officials where there is an underperformance. If underperformance continues, then consequences management as a corrective measure should be employed. My second question is under annual procurement from designated groups. My observation is as follows. The department has set aside procurement spending for designated groups, namely women, youth, and people living with disabilities. However, over the years, the department has struggled to achieve the target of ensuring that women, youth, and people living with disabilities receive 40%, 30%, and 7% of the procurement spending, respectively. In the previous financial year, the department's annual procurement spending on designated groups was 23% for women, 6% for youth, and 2% for the people living with disabilities. However, for the year under review, the department achieved 35%, 11%, and 1% respectively. My question to the department is as follows. What are the underlying reasons for the department's failure to meet the set targets, and what measures could the department implement to guarantee the achievement of the annual procurement targets? My recommendation to the department: the national budget is an important tool that the democratic government uses to transform our country's social and economic inequalities and the legacy of the past. And it would be important for the department to ensure that it achieves its targets. I suggest that the department formulate a strategy to tackle the underachievements of the procurement spending on targeted groups and present the plan to the committee in the first quarter of 2025. The department should encourage designated groups to participate in the departmental procurement program. In addition, I wish to encourage the department to collaborate with the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities, National Treasury, and the Department of Small Business Development to expand business opportunities for these designated groups. My third question is based on the delays in appointing professional service providers. My observation is as follows. Over the past two fiscal years, 2022-2023 and 2023-2024, the department has encountered difficulties in procuring the service of professional service providers, especially in preparation for the implementation of new bulk raw water projects, such as the building of the Coney, the Foxwood, and the Infanta Dam. The target communities continues to suffer delays in starting the dam construction, denying them access to clean drinking water. My question to the department: what measures will the department implement to ensure it manages to procure the services of a professional service provider? Recommendation: in order to address the delays in initiating preparations for the implementation of bulk raw water infrastructure due to non-responsive bids from the various PSPs, I recommend that the department abandon the practice of advertising to procure PSP services on a project-by-project basis. Instead, they should create a panel of PSPs with whom they will enter into contract for specific duration, such as 3 to 5 years. This approach would streamline the department's use of these services, eliminating the need to go through time-consuming public procurement processes each time for the department when it requires them. Question 4 says, bucket eradication program. For several years, the department has faced significant challenges in completing the bucket system eradication program. The department has successfully eradicated bucket system in the other 7 provinces of the country, leaving only the Northern Cape and the Free State province with bucket systems in their formal settlements. The question is, what are the underlying reasons for the delay in the completion of eradicating the bucket system in our country? And what steps would the department take to address the root causes? Are there plans to take action against officials or service providers who have contributed to the program's poor implementation? What is the time frame to eradicate this bucket system in the affected areas? My recommendation will be as follows. The bucket system is not only hygienic, but it is also dehumanizing to those who still use it in this day and age. But it also violates the constitutional obligation of access to adequate sanitation infrastructure services. As a portfolio committee, we would recommend that the National Department of Water and Sanitation outlaw the use of bucket systems, irrespective of whether it is in a formal or a formal settlement. The Department of Water and Sanitation should prohibit local municipalities from providing the bucket system, as it violates the constitutional obligations of access to adequate sanitation infrastructure. On water licenses,
Honourable Member, may I
Chair.
ask that we stick to the 4 questions,
Okay,
and
Chair.
then the second round we can continue.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you. Minister?
No, thanks, Chair. We'll probably share some of the questions. The issues that the member is raising, we must thank her, and the recommendations. But with respect to issues of comparative analysis around performance information versus the non-financial and the financial, when the minister made the presentation, something has happened because most of our projects in the main are actually big projects, they are multi-year. That's why in the presentation, the minister was very clear to say, if you look at the Gantt chart that is there, we might actually be around 71% in terms of completion. But if you look at the Gantt chart on issues of programs that are in progress, we're around 15% or 14%. In other words, when you go there in terms of cumulatively, we're around 85%. And there are various reasons, Chair. One of the reasons is that some of these projects are over a period of three years. That's why the presentation was to say we look at medium-term expenditure framework, but there are adjustments because there are delays in number of projects. Some projects are implemented by us. There was a recognition that there are capacity constraints in the construction unit. But the DG has introduced reforms around procurement models to turn around, but also the issues of introducing more capability on project and contract management. Remember now, we have a standalone branch, which is called the Water Services Management Branch that oversees these projects. You could see that under the year under review, more than 109 projects, just under RPIC Minister was speaking about, they were done. And you look at underwater services improvement grant, more than 433 of those projects are actually being mentioned there. But we must admit, it's an area of improvement. We can still do more around dealing with those issues. On the issue of water use licensing, remember the water use licensing had the biggest implication, Chair, for a number of sectors in our economy. And sometimes it will take more than 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Just to complete the licenses. And after President put it as a priority area in terms of Operation Vulindlela version 1, in terms of the reforms, we've actually dealt with all the backlogs. All the backlogs have been dealt with, but then there's a highest degree of application. The application that we received in the last financial year, there are more than 800, Chairperson. But for you to do a water use license, you need technical skills. You don't only have to read the environmental program report. The environmental program report has a component of environment, there are engineering components. You have to have an engineer. Because if an engineer does not sign off, a professional registered engineer must sign off when the license is issued. When a structure fails on the basis that we have given a permit, there's a problem. Currently, the DG, we ask him to push the technical capability there. More than 122 positions were advertised, Chair. And then out of the 122 positions, it included engineers and scientists. And at this stage, more than 8 of them we've appointed. That's how we've increased capacity. Imagine, Chair, we've moved from 35% in terms of performance on the deadline of 90 days. Currently, we're sitting at 70%. There is a significant improvement on those particular issues. The issue of the bucket eradication, probably the minister will guide us, the DG and the team, and then DMC will deal with those. But around licensing, most of the sectors in our economy, they are very pleased on how we've dealt with it. But it's not been easy. It has not been easy because there has to be some support that must be provided, especially for black license applications. You know, sometimes you need a consultant to put an application. You need a consultant to put an environmental program report, and just to be able to put those. For issues around agriculture, small scale, there is a support mechanism that we are looking at, even in terms of the last term, where we started to discuss with stakeholders to say, how do you apply for a license? And the other thing, the reforms included that the license application now, Chair, you do it online. It's unlike in the past where we're using more papers, it's more digital. Well, there are certain areas around the glitches of the system, but I thought those ones, Minister, I should be able to respond to them. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Minister. Good afternoon, Chairperson, honorable members. Just as a general remark on the issue of the bucket eradication system, I think it is common cause, Chair, that we need to appreciate the different roles that departments need to play in as far as that is concerned. Quite correctly, if we are unable to obviously deal with how municipalities deal with their human settlements with the department as well. As a department, we can consistently continue and say we've got this amount of money, we are going to target certain areas in certain provinces. But it is the role of municipalities to make sure that they move away from a process where there are informal settlements or any form of settlements that are mushrooming, where they, as municipalities, are forced to then provide that particular alternative. So we've said many times, even in the committee, that that particular issue is a moving target. And we consistently say it on the basis that we don't have jurisdiction over some of these responsibilities, in as far as making sure that we are able to say to municipalities, you have to stop. Until it is put somewhere in law where municipalities are told that you will no longer be providing bucket systems to communities, whether formal or informal, then I suspect that we will continue having this discussion. And as far as our reports to the committee and to honourable members is concerned. But I don't know, DG, whether we would be able to be in a position where we've provided before in a presentation to the committee in terms of where we are in as far as that is concerned, the financials, the areas that we will be targeting. But again, Chair, if we are able to conclude that, I can guarantee you that there will be other settlements again that will be using bucket systems as provided for by municipalities, because you would know that the Human Rights Commission would have a field day with municipalities if they are not providing alternative services to settlements. So I do think that there is a greater engagement that is needed between ourselves, Human Settlements and COCTA and SALGA, on how we can look at legislative areas where we make it fairly illegal, as it were, for municipalities to continue to provide bucket system, because I do agree that it does violate the dignity of South Africans. Thank you, Chair.
DG?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. There was a question about whether action is taken against officials when targets are not met from year to year. Quite often, when the targets are not met, they're due to circumstances beyond the control of individual officials. So, for example, if we have a target for a project to be completed where we're funding a municipality and that project is disrupted by a business forum, that's beyond the control of the officials, and we can't take disciplinary action against our officials for that. but we do generally have a system in place, a performance management system in place in the department as required by the public service, and we do follow the processes, and where there's gross non-performance by officials, their managers are required to start disciplinary processes, or all the processes which eventually result in disciplinary action. With regard to the question about the procurement of designated groups, the Honourable Member, initially you indicated that we've set aside procurement spending for designated groups. We haven't set aside procurement spending for designated groups. Under the current regulatory framework, we're not allowed to set aside spending for designated groups under the preferential procurement policy regulations which are currently in effect. Set-asides are not allowed. Under that regulatory framework, we have to use either the 90-10 or 80-20 rule for applying preferences and allocate the 10 points or the 20 points to certain preference groups, and we have to do that before we go out on tender. And then we have to adjudicate the tenders, and we have to, by law, award the tender to the highest scoring tenderer. If we don't do that, then it's declared irregular expenditure by the Auditor General. So that puts a limitation on the degree to which we can achieve the targets. The new procurement bill, which was passed by Parliament, changes that, and it provides for set-asides. We can't yet implement the new procurement bill because the Treasury is still working on the new regulations for it. But when those new regulations are issued and they provide a framework for setting aside, then we'll use those set-aside regulations, and we will then be able to then set aside procurement categories or groups of procurement for designated groups, and then we should be able to have more certainty as to whether we can meet these targets. I think Deputy Minister Maklobo has covered to a large degree about the procurement delays. You had a specific question and suggestion about the creation of a PSP panel. We have recently put in place a PSP panel as you recommended. It doesn't cover all the professionals that we require, so we're going to be putting in place other longer-term agreements called framework agreements, which are a bit similar to panels. That's part of our new infrastructure procurement policy and strategy. So, Honourable Member, we agree with your advice in that regard, and we're implementing that. On the bucket eradication program, to add to the inputs from Deputy Minister Tlolo, you asked, Honourable Member, about the targets. We did make a presentation to the Portfolio Committee, I think in September, where we did provide the targets for the completion of the bucket eradication program, and we indicated that for the remaining projects that in different towns the targets range, most of them will be completed in December this year, but there's a couple that will be only completed in March 2025, and those are ones where we have to put in bulk wastewater infrastructure, wastewater treatment works, and upgrade the wastewater treatment works. Honourable members will recall that we did indicate that when this project was initially planned, the upgrading of bulk wastewater treatment works and the increase of their capacity was not included in the planning. So that has resulted in the extended timeframes for the completion of some of these projects. And then finally, with regard to the outlawing of buckets, we agree, and we developed a national sanitation framework, which we took to Cabinet, which provided a policy framework in that regard, which said that the bucket system should be unequivocally designated as an unacceptable form of sanitation. So that was approved by Cabinet, and that set the framework for us to then put in the draft new norms and standards, which I indicated in my introductory remarks. We went on public consultation during last financial year and we're currently waiting for the State Law Advisor to ratify before the Minister gazettes them. We've put in those norms and standards again, that the bucket system is unacceptable in the municipalities. It is way below the minimum norm and standard for sanitation. That is also going to be strengthened by the amendments to the Water Services Act, which I also indicated we've been on public consultation. We're waiting for the State Law Advisor to ratify, and will then submit to Cabinet for approval for it to come to Parliament. In the revised norms, in the Water Services Amendment Bill, the draft one, we've put in amendments there to give the Minister similar powers that she has in terms of the National Water Act, which basically make certain non-compliance an offence. Currently, in terms of the National Water Act, non-compliance with certain things is an offence. So, for example, repeated ignoring of directives from the department to stop sewage pollution by municipality is an offence, and that's why we sometimes, as a last resort, lay criminal charges against municipalities for sewage pollution. In the Water Services Amendment Bill, we also want to put certain things as an offence, which is not currently there in the Water Services Act. And one of the things that we will put in as an offence is gross non-compliance with these minimum norms and standards by municipalities, including the use of the bucket system. So we are, having sketched all of that, you can see how we are moving towards outlawing the bucket system. Thank you, Chair.
Questions?
Oh, okay, no, thanks so much, Chairperson, even though I was still working on my questions, but I will proceed. No, let me greet the official from the department, the minister, the TCTA, yeah, all protocol observed, yeah, I'll just put it like that. No, it's fine. I'm going to ask, my first question goes to the TCTA. I only have one question to you. The acid managed drainage crisis is a direct result of capitalist exploitation. Yet you use public funds to clean it up. Why aren't you demanding full reparations from the mining companies responsible? How much has corporations contributed compared to taxpayers? That is the only question that I have. And you, because I had a lot of questions, but I realized that your directive, your mission says something else. So, and your vision, it says something else. Then I said, let me leave them for now. Yeah, so earlier, when we were with the Auditor General and the DPME, there were questions that we asked, but unfortunately you were not part of that meeting, and we felt it necessary, I think, in future, but speaking together with my colleagues, that in future, I think, in the meetings where we have the Auditor General and the DPME, you need to be there, because now we're going to go back and forth asking the very same questions that we have asked the Auditor General and the DPME. So, when going through the presentation of the Auditor General on the Department of Water and Sanitation and its entities, it highlighted many major issues and areas of concern that were identified in that audit report. There were persistent project delays and poor management that were mentioned there. Only 39% of planned maintenance projects were completed in 2023-24. There were significant delays in major infrastructure projects like the Clan Williams dams. And I'm not going to mention everything. We go to water quality and infrastructure deterioration. The 2023 Blue Drop report identified 277 critical water supply systems, an increase from 267 in 2022. 41% of water service authorities have critical systems. And then you go to the sanitation backlogs. The bucket eradication program have significantly delayed. Only 16% of allocated budget spent over 5 years, with no project completed in Free State and in the Northern Cape. This is what we learned from that. There is an issue of financial mismanagement. Irregular expenditure increased by 257 million in 2023-24. Fruitless and wasteful expenditure increased by 229.7 million. And then the material misstatements in financial statements requiring corrections. Lack of accountability also was a factor in that presentation by the Auditor General. Inadequate consequence management, especially at TCTA. Investigation into irregular expenditure, not always timely or thorough. And then there was an issue of intergovernmental relation that was also mentioned there, poor coordination between national, provincial, and local water authorities. I was just concerned because previously the Deputy Minister Mahlobo used to told that the district development model as the panacea to solve water-related issues. But when it was picked by the Auditor General, then it gave me something that we're still not there. We asked question to the Auditor General. My question was the continued existence of bucket toilets in informal settlement is an indictment on the government's commitment to human dignity, given abysmal 16% spending rate on the bucket eradication program over 5 years. So, according to you, the department, that question was asked to the Auditor General, but I'm now asking you, you don't believe that this constitutes a violation of constitutional rights that warrants immediate legal actions against responsible officials? We are having a problem in the Northern Cape, in the Free State. What did we do with those officials that were responsible for those projects? Because I don't think we did take, we have disciplined those people.
Honourable Clara, my apology. The department and the minister don't have access to that information that you are given. Can I ask you that we please deal with the presentation that was presented to us? If there are these questions, you are more than welcome to ask them to give you that in writing, because they don't have that presentation in front of them, and I think it would be unfair from us to ask them. If it's a general question, it's fine, but to deal with the issues that's in another report that they have not seen. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. That's why I said I think we should have. They should have been part of this meeting, but of the meeting of the Auditor General. But it's fine. Let me leave it there. As we reflect on the performance of the Department of Water and Sanitation over the past years, we are confronted with a stark reality where millions of our fellow South Africans still lack access to clean water and dignified sanitation facilities. The presentation we have had paint a picture of administration that is failing to meet its most basic obligation to the people. While bureaucrats celebrate marginal improvements in statistics, our communities continue to suffer. We see children falling ill from contaminated water, elderly citizens forced to carry heavy baggage for kilometers, and human dignity stripped away by the persistence of bucket toilets in the 21st century. So my question is, that was just my remarks before my questions. Your department claims 99.8% budget expenditure and 100% spending of infrastructure grants, yet millions still lack basic water and sanitation. How do you explain the massive disconnect between your rosy financial reports and the daily water struggle faced by our people? And you deliberately are you deliberately misleading the committee about the real impact of your spending? The continued existence of the bucket toilets and raw sewage in our streets is a national disgrace that violates human dignity. Why has your department failed for decades to eradicate these inhuman practices despite spending billions? What urgent radical measures are you taking to address this crisis? In your report, you have incurred over 10 billion in irregular expenditure since 2015, while the water trading entity is owed nearly 25 billion in unpaid bills. How do you justify this gross financial mismanagement and failure to collect revenue? When will someone be held accountable for what appears to be blunted looting of public funds meant for water provision? What steps will be taken to recover these funds and redirect them to service delivery for the poorest masses of the people? Lastly, Chairperson, the vacancy rates for engineers and scientists is at 49%. How can the department effectively deliver services with such a severe skill shortage? What is being done to urgently fill these critical posts to ensure water infrastructure development benefits the working class? Why are we not seconding maybe the engineers or scientists from the private companies or either from foreign countries if we don't have that? And lastly, the last one. The data collections remains a major challenge with 419 data days reported. How does this impact the department's ability to fund water projects in poor areas? What steps are being taken to improve revenue collection without further burdening impoverished households? Thank you so much, Chair. Oh, there's another one that I forgot. The reports indicate only partial achievement of water conservation and demand management targets. Climate change poses an existential threat to our water security, with the poor most vulnerable. What concrete steps is your department taking to draft-proof our water systems, upgrade crumbling infrastructure, and ensure sustainable access for the most marginalized communities? Thanks so much.
Minister?
I can start, then the minister will guide. Chairperson, let's thank Honorable Mohlala, but there are certain matters we should correct so that we are on record on some of the things that are being said. You know, the question of acid mine drainage. The TCTA is our implementing agent on an intervention. But Honorable Mohlala, you know that in South Africa, as a mining capital, there are historical matters. One of the historical matters, some of these mines are derelict. Some of the mines are ownerless. You can't trace them. You can't trace them until there were proper regulations around mining to say who was what. And you will know that in terms of the mining regime, there were introduction of a number of issues. One of the things that was introduced was the issues of mining licenses, where people are supposed to even to have an environmental provision, where you have to take an insurance. That's why our own people, when they work with the Department of Mineral Resources and Petroleum, we don't just issue a license when there is no clear financial provision. That's one condition. But at the very same time, you'll have something that is an engineering component to say, if you are going to do a rehabilitation, whether it's underground mining or whether open cast mining, what does it mean and what is going to be the impact on what? And our teams, they monitor all the time. The state has a responsibility. In instances where there are derelict mines, ownerless mine, we will not be able to say, let's leave them. They have an impact, both in terms of the environment, occupational health and safety, people that are communities that are residing around those areas. You'll have your sinkholes. You go to Egoroleni in the main, you could see houses are falling, and the state has a responsibility. And some underground in terms of water there. I know an example, for an example, around Mpumalanga, your grill and so forth. The volume of water underground, which is contaminated, is about 10 times the volume of the Witbank Dam. What have we done? All the mines that are there, they have actually started to do mine reclamation, what we call mine reclamation. There is a technology. And most of these particular areas where mining has happened, they are producing water of a right quality standard for themselves. But at the very same time, there are certain municipalities that have done off-take agreements. But equally, the water must still be discharged for the environment because there's a reserve component for the Hohakis and the others. That's what is being happening. And the minister has instructed us that we should partner with the mines because that's the water that is available, Chair, in the ecosystem to increase the yield. And the minister has also directed that we proceed with the reforms for reuse because reuse and recycling is about ensuring that there is more water in terms of water security. Therefore, the idea that we are doing nothing is totally not correct. The ones that are derelict, like you go to Eguruleni, those gold mines, this is where there's a lot of reclamation plans that we've done. And they're producing a lot of water and it's quality water. Probably at a particular point, the leadership of the portfolio committee, you can do an oversight. And we're speaking to many of these entities that we should be able to work together as part of the compact. Some of the issues, Chair, we are correct, we should not answer all of them. Honorable Mhlal, the issues of the idea that we are not performing, we have been here. We don't want to claim easy victories, but we have to acknowledge we've moved. This department, when we started in the last administration, this top management was not there. There was no stability in administration. We appointed the best team, the best engineers that you could have. This department, for the first time, has more than 800 engineers and scientists. And which is, you could see the quality of the work is improving. That's why when I was making the example just around licensing only just to improve on the capacity, we needed about 122. And currently, 8 of those scientists and engineers, they're in place because it's a technical matter that we have to deal with. You can go around the issues of projects. I know that people normally complain, hey, you don't manage your own dams, you don't maintain your own dams. You go to slide number 25. 474 maintenance projects. We've upscaled our maintenance because it has a risk. One of the risks, it will impact on water security. In other words, your assurance of supply and availability will be affected. But then what happens if there's a dam failure? Our own infrastructure fails. That's why Minister was here in the Western Cape to say everybody who owns a dam must take a responsibility. They must firstly be registered. They must be continuously be monitoring. We're even increasing our own capacity around approved professional persons, which we call it APP, just for infrastructure. We're not saying that now because we've done more than 474 maintenance projects that we've completed, that we're done. There are still many of our assets, we can bring them to right formality. Minister said in her remark, a major O&M is being done. The tunnel that is coming from Lesotho. You postpone that tunnel, just the maintenance of that tunnel, it will have huge implications. Some of the scheduled maintenance by Rainwater, Umgeni, they are the actually necessary inconvenience for long-term gains. Therefore, the numbers are there, Fighter Mushala, that you have to look at. My last point, Minister, I thought I should deal with this thing called buckets. I think Honorable Sishule has dealt with this issue. You know the country, as long as we're not law-abiding, there are certain organizations which are represented in Parliament. Deliberately, they say people must cycle everywhere. They cycle everywhere. When they cycle everywhere, there are rules. There are rules, Chair, to say, when do I move someone? Immediately they are there, they will need what? They will need sanitation facilities.
Hello, Honorable Mhlala.
And in reality, we must work. We must work together and don't disorganize ourselves. Because if we plan properly, the land use management and all other issues are taken care of. For an example, why should we discipline our officials? Us as members of legislature, there is a clear delineation of roles and responsibilities. Do you know who built the houses in Free State? It was not the Department of Water and Sanitation. It was not even Water Reviers and Bospo who built infrastructure, top structures without bulk system. Because the DG had to put bulk there. You don't have a sewer treatment plant. Even if you can actually connect this thing from the house there to say you want it to be a sewer system, but when there's no wastewater treatment plant, where are you going to do it? And if there's no network, worse if there's no water. If there's no water, how will you actually have a sewer system? That's why Minister Mojatina, she says, there are many forms of dignified sanitation. There's a sewer system, non-sewer system, and let's be able to explore. And there is no technology that we want to say is inferior, because it must meet health and safety standard, the norms and standard DG talks about. I thought maybe let me answer only these three, so that at least we clarify some of the matters. But the reality, progress has been made, but we're the first to admit we have not arrived where we want to.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Honourable Mohlala. Indeed, maybe when the Portfolio Committee on its own deliberations would in future invite all of us to be able to engage on the report on what are the observations of AG, what are the observations of DPME, so that it can be easier for us to respond to questions. We take that. Chair, we said we get allocated a budget through this committee, but that budget is not for each and every citizen in South Africa. The budget is allocated as per the fiscal that is there at a particular year. Surely we have not reached everyone. That's what we are saying. But with the budget that has been allocated to us, we have spent that budget. If now the case, which I think you are unfairly treated by Honourable Mohlala, that we come to deliberately mislead the committee, we cannot do that. Myself, deputy ministers present here, we have taken oath. We cannot come deliberately to come and mislead the committee. If the committee has some reservations on how we have spent money in terms of projects, in terms of water resource, the committee has a liberty to go out there and say, you said you have spent this amount in this project. Want to see that project? Because now we are accused of misleading the committee. And I want to put on record, we are not misleading the committee here. We have spent on what was allocated to us, but that spending, surely she's correct. It does not meet all the demands. I said earlier on, the population in South Africa is growing day by day. When there are informal settlements that just mushroom over a night and they access water, their illegal connections, that does not mean we have not delivered bulk water infrastructure. But if that water does not reach other people, at the end of the day, it's not us that put the water on the tap. We can do everything in terms of water resource, but it's not us alone. There is municipality here. Maybe at some point it will be important that the committee, I don't know what, maybe a joint meeting with the committee on COCTA, because the issue of water is cross-cutting. It will be better to do that, because now most of our sins from Honourable Mohlala are the sins of municipalities. We do our best, but we are not going to overtake. The Constitution is very clear who must do water provision. What is the role and the mandate of this department? We are discharging on our mandate, but at a particular point we'll have to draw a line and end here and allow municipality to do their work. However, we take some of the positive and constructive comments from her. The issue of dignity. That is why our slogan is saying water is life and sanitation is dignity. And what we are busy with now, we explained in our meeting in August, September, where are we on this bucket system, and why were we called to come in and do that ratification in Free State, and how far are we, and what are the delays? But it's like we have not, maybe because this is an annual report, so even those matters that we responded to, they come back. We take that. Chair, members are playing their oversight. Thank you.
DG, would you like to add?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I just wanted to add about the question of Honourable Mokhlala about the fact that we've spent 100% of our grants, but people are still experiencing daily water struggles. So the needs in the country are huge. For example, we've estimated that 100 billion is required just to upgrade the capacity of wastewater treatment works, just for that. Our 2 grants annually are 11 billion. So if we need 100 billion just to upgrade the capacity of wastewater treatment works, we need hundreds of billions to provide water to people who don't have access to water. We need probably another 100 billion to upgrade the capacity of water treatment works. I can go on and on. So the 11 billion that we're spending is small compared to the needs out there. And that explains, Honourable Mokhlala, why it might appear that the expenditure of our grants are not having an impact. But they are having an impact. You can visit many projects where we funded municipalities around the country where you can see the impact, where municipalities have used the grant money to extend access to communities who didn't previously have access, where upgrading has been done to water treatment works or refurbishment has been done to them and wastewater treatment works. So the situation would be a lot worse, Honourable Mokhlala, if we weren't spending those grants, even though there's a huge need which is unmet because we don't have the money to meet it. Part of the problem is that the municipalities shouldn't be relying on grant finance from us to do this. They should be getting revenue from the sale of water, and the municipal councils should be using that revenue to invest in water and sanitation infrastructure. And they should also be using it to borrow money and then pay back the loans to address some of the backlogs that we have. The national government's never going to be able to afford to give the municipalities all the money that's required to meet the needs. Most of it needs to be funded from revenue from the sale of water. Honourable Mokhlala, you also asked what actions have been taken against irregular expenditure. When the CFO was presenting, he went through all the historic irregular expenditure item by item, and in the table it showed the actions that have been taken. And if you look at those lines in the table, repeatedly from action to action, it indicates that there's been disciplinary actions taken, and in many instances officials have been dismissed. So there have been quite a few dismissals and disciplinary actions taken by the department to deal with those issues of irregular expenditure. Then on the issue of the vacancy rates of the engineers and scientists, to add to what Dear Mokhlala said, as the CFO indicated, we spent almost all of our personnel budgets. And the only reason why we didn't spend 100% of our personnel budget was because in order to reduce personal expenditure in the government as a whole, control measures were put in place, including that we had to get the Minister of Public Service approval before the filling of any positions. So we have very little budgets to hire additional engineers and scientists, and this is not unique to DWS. There are many departments across government which have insufficient budget to hire all the personnel that they require. But when we do have a little bit of money left over, or when officials resign, or when they retire, we do prioritize the filling of engineer and scientist posts with those limited funds which become available. And as Dear Mokhlala indicated, for example, we prioritize the filling of engineering and scientist posts related to the processing of water use licenses last financial year. There was also a question about debt collection. and the impact of the department not collecting debt and what steps are being taken. We did do a presentation recently to the Portfolio Committee Chair on the issue of the debts owed to the water boards. So most of the debts which are owed to the department are the chain reaction of the fact that municipalities are not paying the water boards. The major debts owed to the department are from the water boards, which can't pay us because they're not being paid by the municipalities. And we're working with our water boards to do a number of steps to ensure that the debt collection issue is addressed, including the fact that we've standardized the debt collection processes, and those standardized processes are being implemented by the department and all the water boards, which includes implementing restrictions as a last resort, or even attaching bank accounts as a last resort, which some of the water boards have done. And then we've also engaged with National Treasury on this, and National Treasury has agreed to collaborate with us. So again, as a last resort, they've agreed that we can ask them to withhold equitable share allocations to municipalities which don't pay. So there are quite a few steps which are being taken to deal with this debt collection issue. With regard to the debt owed to the department by other non-municipality debtors, we've also appointed service providers to assist us with collecting the debt, and the CFO can talk to that a little bit more as well. Thank you, Chair. CFO.
Yeah, thank you very much. DG, that is correct. We do participate on a panel that has been put together by National Treasury for debt collection, and then we are also implementing credit control measures, and where necessary we also refer those cases to our legal services. And with regard to the municipal debt, I think DG and the Minister has covered that part. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think we...
Chair, can we allow TCTA?
Yeah, I will now. I just would like also just to say that, you know, having 44.3 million rand not spent, and you look at the 2021-22 financial year of 2.5 billion that was returned. Now, if we were in that situation, we could say that the department's not doing their work because the money that was allocated was not spent. So I think we can applaud the department as a whole for the hard work of bringing that down to the levels we are at the moment. TCTA, would you like to add something to the question on the asset mine drainage? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Member Mhlala did ask, and it's a very good question and a relevant one, which we were struggling with, and I think I was still part of the water board at the time. But the truth of the matter is our environmental legislation was not what it is at this stage. So when the mining activities were happening, I think now over a century, everything that happened at the time, we didn't have the kind of strong environmental legislation that we have now. So if you look at the legal instruments that are available, even if one were to say, I need to chase these particular people because they've made money out of this and now we're suffering, you look at the legislation that was applicable at the time, you'd find that it was quite porous. I must say that the sister department in terms of the environmental affairs has actually done a lot of work with us as well to try and lock that down as well. And the reason why it's very important as well for Department of Water and Sanitation to look at us now dealing with the acid mine drainage. As long as we are not dealing with it, as long as we have those mine tailings, there's a very high possibility that they would actually mess up with and contaminate the water underground. And if you look at it, there's still quite a number of water, because South Africa is still a water scarce country. So not only are we looking at surface water, we are also looking at groundwater. And you'd find that there's a lot of movement underground in terms of water. So it's very important that we do what we do, because if we sit and do nothing, we're going to start having a lot of people that are negatively affected health-wise because we are not treating that. So that is why we have to do that. And I think the Minister and Deputy Minister have actually answered the other part of that particular issue. But that's where we stand. Unfortunately, as the water sector, we are at the tail end of something that was done within the mining fraternity. And yet, if we do nothing with it, it's going to have devastating impact on the ordinary people on the street. The second issue that was raised, Chair, with your approval, was when there was mention that in terms of TCTA, inadequate consequence management was highlighted. And I think, with your permission, I would want to address that as well. The presentation that was done by the CFO actually talked to that particular issue from a point of view of where we were in the previous year to where we are in terms of the year that it's under review. And there's been a lot of movement on that. But my engagement with the AG says, yeah, we can see improvement, but until it's finalized, we are not going to present it as if everything has actually been sorted. So that's how they actually report. But what we have done was that whatever was outstanding, we then took it to National Treasury. National Treasury has just responded to us and said, now it's a matter that the board can deal with. Because what we're saying is, some of these things, as the CFO has said, happened 2013, 2014. If you look at the National Archives and Record Services of 1996, they say we need to hold certain information for 5 years, the other for 7 years. Now you'd find that you don't have the supporting information, but any auditor will say, unless I see proof, I'm not going to do anything with this. And I never take anything to board to say, let's even consider writing this off, because the first thing they would ask is, what is National Treasury's position on it? So we follow that process in line with PFMA before we finalize it. But we are at that point where we got feedback from them, and now we're finalizing this. And in certain instances, it's just one of those things that are very difficult to deal with, because irregular expenditure is not under circumstances, because National Treasury, the AG actually audited. It's not under circumstances where money was lost or there was corruption or anything. Some of it, it's really impossible not to have actually found ourselves there. An example is one of the notes coming from Treasury that says, if you are on the ground and there are any changes to or variations, National Treasury wanted to deal with it themselves. Now, the turnaround time from National Treasury, and remember what I said, how long it took us just for the exemption, 20 months. Now, I'm saying I'm not talking 20 months, but an actual example was, you have people on the ground that are supposed to work. The FIDIC contracts that we have says, if they stand in time, then the state would actually have to pay the contractors. Now, we had people that had to now wait for the turnaround time from Treasury to give us the variation that we required. Now, some of the people at TCTA had to now sit and say, do I now risk irregular expenditure, or are we going to pay these contractors for doing nothing? Because that's part of FIDIC. So they decided, no, we'd rather save the state and ensure that there's productivity on the basis of what gets paid. So some of these cases are not that easy, just from a point of view of how things happened. And it's very important that we are able to articulate some of these things. The 175,000 that CFO talked about in terms of the current year, it's one of those things where we're talking about legal fees. Legal fees, sometimes you don't know what you're going to get and the amount of cases that you're going to deal with. From where I sit, I found that there was justification for what happened, because you spend money that you did not have because there was a case that needed to be defended. And I'm not even talking about the Lesotho case where some company in Germany had an agreement with the Lesotho government, and the Lesotho government reneged on that. That had nothing to do with the Lesotho Islands Water Project. But then there was a garnishee order that was issued against our project, because they thought we can get money from this project, which is the Lesotho Highlands Water Project, so that the Lesotho can pay out of the royalties. Now we had to sit and say, do I allow South Africa not to have water because Lesotho did not do their work? So we had to spend that money to defend, because it's important for this project for people to have water come into South Africa. So not everything that is that where we say it's irregular it's actually wrong. Under certain circumstances, it's necessary, but I think it's up to us to be able to get to account to the portfolio committee in terms under what circumstances did some of these things happen. Chair, I think I've answered the questions as asked.
Thank you very much. Can I quickly just say something, Honourable Member?
Okay.
The last buses for members are leaving at 17:30. There's no bus after that, so we've got at 20 minutes left to get answers. Can I ask that I give the other two members the opportunity, and I'll come back to you if it's fine. All right.
No, I'm a little bit surprised, but I'm going to Mr. Stenan how he responded to these questions. It's on the issue of this annual report, because when you read there is an annual report, we are discussing an annual report. There's no way that the annual report, I think it's the annual report on audit findings by the Auditor General. That's why we're asking those questions. Unless if you are saying one day, you will bring again this department so that we can
No. Honourable Member, it's not fair that the report, they did not see the Auditor General's report, but as the Minister said, in future we will deal with it differently as you have requested. Do you want to ask some questions? Any questions whether that was a comment? Honourable Ramayela, would you like to ask some questions? Then we can conclude.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I also want to first congratulate and applaud the department, and in particular the DG, for the effective turnaround strategy that he employed upon his arrival in the department, and the trajectory of achieving clean audit at some point, which is quite clear and which is highly possible to achieve that, given the progress that we have achieved so far, and I will say since 2019 to the current 2023 financial year audit report. That's a very good work, and must give credit where it is due. And Chair, I want us to agree with the department. And in this time, I want the executive really not to enter this debate. Honorable Minister and Deputy Ministers, your officials have got an opportunity through the management letter when the AG raises issues, right? And you've got an opportunity to do presentations, right? Let's not come here and speak as if this process is not there internal. This process is there. To the point that the AG has raised these matters. These matters are important for us to take into consideration because you have been given an opportunity. And the AG says this is a serious matter. Now, we do not want you to come here and rehash the debates you had in responding to the management letter. That is an internal matter. We are here now. I want you to agree. That's why I'm saying, Honorable Minister and Deputy, this one is not yours. They just have to be honest with us and dealing with this matter. That opportunity you have been given. Now, DG, with the good work that you are doing, what is it that we're seeing now in terms of the observations? We are seeing laxity creeping in your department, in as far as the application of consequence management is concerned, and we are not going to keep quiet about it. And we are saying to you, you must deal with it with the harshest possible means you can, so that we nip this in the bud now. And that has got nothing to do with the minister and the deputy minister. This has all to do with people that are reporting to you. So for me, I take serious exception here to be told or to be addressed, Honorable Chair, as if the department was never given an opportunity. That's undermining us, and that should not be allowed. That's one matter that I really wanted to deal with. Now, in as far as irregular expenditure, the biggest culprit here is our water trading entity. Now, Chair, and I'm direct, I want the trading entity, water entity, to report to this portfolio committee at some point. Timelines you can give, Chair. As to the mechanism that they are going to apply to deal with this irregular expenditure that has been recorded. And the same will then apply to TCTA. You can't be told 62 million is a lot of money in terms of fruitful and wasteful expenditure. We can't be told that this is not a serious matter and we are expected really to take this matter like this. The fact that the AG has raised this matter, it means this matter is important. Therefore, we want TCTA to come back here to tell us the mechanism they're going to apply to deal with this fruitless and wasteful expenditure. I think that's a very critical matter that I would really, Chair, want you to have a handle over. Another one, Chair, is that I would request that at some point, and this one I would say within 14 days because it's possible, that our entities must be able to bring a report to this portfolio committee presenting mechanism as to how they are going to really be dealing with their active MIs within 14 days. That's what we really request our entities to really do. An observation, Chair, here is that, and I think Honorable Mhlala has alluded to, as we are saying, we really appreciate the good work that the department is doing in the trajectory to achieve clean audit. But what I want, Honorable Minister, is that obviously, and we have alluded to this, there's an inverse relationship between achieving a clean audit and the increasing decline in service delivery. There's this inverse relationship. All that I want to know, and I want the department to come and present to this portfolio committee a mechanism in which they are going to deal with this. Okay, a mechanism in which this contrast or the inverse relationship between service delivery and achieving audit is concerned. How are we going to reach an equilibrium point where we are not neglecting service delivery, but also are achieving good in terms of audit reports? I wouldn't put a timeline to this, but I'm saying it's a matter that Honorable Minister and Deputy Ministers on your downtown can look at the matter. And I'm emphasizing it because even to your admission the department, you recognize in one meeting here that indeed, in as far as SDGs are concerned, we have regressed. And we can't just be a statement and we do not have an action that will try to curb this kind of a down trend that is going on as far as service delivery is concerned. Now, I think I've dealt with the matter, but now in terms of the TCTA, I know in terms of the department, they are very clear policy. They've got the implementation ready study. They came with this policy because previously there will be projects that gets completed, but there's no source. Now to deal with that matter, when they say there's an implementation ready study is done, we show this project has got a source, so you plan it from a source to the tap. It's quite clear. Any other issue that comes is in the process of implementation. That is very understood. Now, when it comes to TCTA, I would want the TCTA to come and present to the portfolio committee at some point something similar to the implementation ready study. I'm saying so because of the 7-year and 4-year delay in terms of implementation of the two projects, Mkomazi and Crocodile Mukolo. And I'm sure both two provinces are affected. The premiers have at some point, in terms of the medium-term strategy, included these projects. Because these projects were handed to them as projects that are going to be implemented. So what have we done? We have misled our leaders, we have misled our premiers by making sure that these projects become part of their mid-term strategic framework. But for the TCTA to come here today and present to us the challenges, I mean, if you know you have to get an off-take agreement, if you know you've got to get an approval from National Treasury, If you know you've got to get an approval for this and this, stakeholders that are necessary for you to come to a conclusion that this project is feasible and is implementation ready. Can the TCTA can work on that method and come and present to this portfolio committee at some point? Lastly, Chair, is that can we be able to get within 14 days audit action plans with regard to 2023-2024 financial year? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Minister, I think the discussion the whole day now concerning the regress, what's going on in the country and the money spent, I understand it's a difficult situation because you give grants to municipality A and then they spend that money, it's 100% spent, but there's not services, there's no water in the tap, which is not your responsibility, which is a COCTA responsibility. So I think we understand that, but is there a way that you will be able to address what the honourable member has said? And the whole day it comes out that what we see from the reports, from the AG, from yourselves, from TCTA, is not what the members are experiencing on the ground. And I think it is also true to say that it's also not your responsibility if money has been allocated, it's been spent. Where I come from, I know there's an area, Letlebile Block B. They've got piped water, but there's no water in the pipes for years now. So that is a problem that maybe yourself as also need to address with COCTA, and how we're going to deal with that. I know it's a complex issue, but you can try your best to, and then the request that has been made for these reports, if we can then receive this in 14 days. Minister?
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much to all honourable members. Chair, maybe one must apologize on behalf of TCTA. Maybe they over-summarized the report because the chair said, you have read the report. They must do the highlights. It was not them voluntarily who wanted to do the highlights, but they listened to the procedure that was given to them by the chair. If that was that summarized highlight is not what you wanted, it was not deliberate for them to do that. Chair, we agree that the time frames that have been put here, that the department must bring a clear audit action plan. The department must as well engage with COCTA. We are indeed engaging with COCTA, COCTA and National Treasury. Hence, we are at a stage where we are saying we must ring-fence a percentage of their municipal infrastructure grant, their equitable share, to ensure that the water infrastructure is attended to. But we will, once we have that comprehensive plan, inform the committee. We will also work and with TCTA to ensure that you get the report sent to the committee as requested, that on the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and as well as the report within 14 days from the entities. We are going to deal with that, Chair. We appreciate, Chair, and when members are making inputs, they also assist the department to come up with a turnaround a plan. Honourable Moore was saying we must also make a closer look in terms of this bucket eradication program, but also to ensure that we accelerate service delivery, work more faster, work more smarter, even if some of the things are not on our full mandate, but let's do monitoring, because we allocate grants, and therefore let's follow the grants, and that's what we said in our opening remarks. But Chair, we really want to appreciate the engagement with the committee. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the time, and drive safely wherever you go, and we will then give the opportunity to the members to get on their buses. Otherwise, they'll sleep here, and we're going to oversight tomorrow at Clem William. I'm not sure whether someone is going there as well from the department side. Okay.
But when are they coming now to respond on this thing of Auditor General? I heard the when are they coming? When are they coming?
We'll come back.
Because we're
Thank
not
you very
make
much.
jokes about it.
Meeting is adjourned.